and welcome to the Pages of Light podcast, your destination for discussions of popular fantasy and science fiction novels from a Christian worldview. My name is Tyler, aka Varum, and with me, as always, is Gabriel, aka the Quarantine Quartermaster. Welcome back to the podcast, Gabe. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good, because we're going to be talking about the Powder Mage Trilogy by Brian McClellan, and I think when I came up with the name Quarantine Quartermaster, I think most recently I had read about Quartermasters in this book. Very briefly they're in the books, but yeah, I feel like this is part of my origin story because I've read this several times.
All right, very good. Now we know the origin story of the Quarantine Quartermaster. It's always good to have an origin story for the heroes, right? So
that's right.
All right. Make sure you follow us on social media. Pages of Light, we're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all sorts of places. Go and follow us there. You can also check out our website, pagesoflight.com, and see what we're doing over there. And yes, as Gabe mentioned, we are going to be doing the Powder Mage Trilogy #1, which is called Promise of Blood. And yeah, it's a series that I've heard some good things about, and I've been excited to kind of jump into it, and it's a little bit different of a story than I'm used to reading, because I think I read mostly like epic fantasies that are set in like more medieval kind of settings with swords and bows and magic and that kind of stuff. But this is a little bit of a different setting. Gabe, do you want to tell the people what kind of how this is different than normal fantasy books?
Sure, yeah. As a former history teacher, I'm not too into history, but let me just tell you that this is post-industrial revolution. So we have things like gunpowder and industry and unions and, and then we have this kind of class struggle going on, and that is kind of the main feature of this book. It's kind of why the book exists. It's around the class struggle that's existing between the haves and the have-nots. We have a ruling class, the royals in Adro, which is our main country that we're in. And we have the people who have kind of been stepped on for years. And we have a leader, a hero, a field marshal named Tamas, who steps up and takes matters into his own hands about the direction that the country is going to go in. And so it's definitely a different... It's kind of almost unique in the fact... for me personally, I don't think that there's a lot of books that incorporate, in the fantasy world, that incorporate guns and magic. Hats off to Brian McClellan for developing this... his little universe here, and it's a lot of fun. And it's also, if you're reading with younger kids, it's also pretty gory, and there's actually a few swear words in this book, and I was like, wow, I didn't remember that from the first read through. But definitely a different pace book from the other books that we've looked at in our podcast, like Robert Jordan and
Brando Sando.
Yeah, Brando Sando. It's definitely a different pace of book. It's a lot faster, and it's got its own unique kind of time frame that we're in. So what did you think of it So are you going to do full disclosure, Tyler?
Yeah, preface, so I've not finished this book yet. So we're doing half of the book today. We'll be doing up to about chapter 20, I think, is where we're going to cut it short, because it's 40 chapters, so it's about halfway through the book. So we'll do that. I have read a little bit past chapter 20. I'm on chapter 30 right now, so I do know some of what happens afterwards, but we'll save enough so that we have enough to talk about for part 2 whenever we do that. Yeah, that's going to be the plan for this podcast.
And it's going to be tough for me, everyone, because I've read this book several times, and I've got to try and shut it down, because, as you know, Varum does not like a spoiler. Okay, so we got to keep it on the DL for him.
That's right. No spoilers in the comments either. If I see a spoiler in the comments, I'm going to riot.
You're going to rage quit.
Rage quit. The podcast is over. I'm just gonna cut it off. No more.
Nope, that's it.
Yes. Okay. So that's what we're doing. Promise of Blood, book 1 of the Powder Mage Trilogy. We will plan to do the other ones in the trilogy. I think we're not going to do them all in a row though. So we'll spread them out over the course of the year probably. So yeah. First section, we'll just jump in. We're gonna do our favorite quotes, or one of our favorite quotes. We'll do other quotes in the second part. So I'll start off. My quote is one from Taniel, who's one of the characters in the book. This is something that he says to himself in his head when he's thinking about his father, who his father is Tamas. And so he says, "When would Tamas learn that expedience was not always right?" And yeah, I just thought it was a good quote and a good thing to remember, that just because something is the easy way or the quick way, that doesn't make it the right decision or like the best thing that you should do. So I don't know. That's pretty simple. There's not really like too much to read into that one, but I thought it was a good tidbit, you know.
Yeah, and I think that we as Christians, we are always looking, well, not, I think the human nature in us always seeks the easiest route, the path
Sure.
of least resistance, and
Yep.
Following God is difficult because it's about giving up the expediency that we default to and taking the path. Following God is hard, but it is also simple at the same time. Like, you
Yep.
are supposed to forgive people. You are supposed to turn the other cheek. And to do those things, and to swallow your pride, and to swallow your anger in certain situations, and to do those things, it can be tough. But it's a very simple directive that you're
Yep.
supposed to do these things. So yeah, I thought that was a good quote that you chose here, Tyler.
Yeah. What do you got for us?
Okay, so mine is from Tamas to Nixlaus. And this is a little past the chapter 20 mark, but it reads, "The world is changing. People do not exist to serve their governments or their kings. Governments exist to serve the people. So the people should have a say in those governments." Tamas to Nixlaus. So back to what I was kind of saying earlier, that Tamas has taken the reins of Adro, which is the country that we're in right now, and he does not like the leadership in the country, specifically Manhooch, the king, and how he's basically running up a lot of debt and not thinking of the commoners and the people who serve him. And basically he often says, like, you're eating food that would feed hundreds of people, and in your parties and stuff, and you're not thinking about the common man and everything. So I wanted to bring this quote in because it's kind of like the center point around Tamas's thinking, which has kind of led to the whole scenario of the book, Promise of Blood. So
Yeah.
and we learned this in the first 20 chapters. So I'm just going to kind of jump in and transition. Well, okay, I'll just do a short about Tamas, because it's kind of out of sync with what we had planned. But
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, so Tamas has staged a coup. Manhooch has been king for a long time, and he has been appointed by Kresimir, a god in this Powder Mage Trilogy world. So Kresimir has appointed that there, in the 9 kingdoms, that there will be kings that rule over the people, and Tamas has watched the country sink further and further into debt, and that people are not happy, and Manhooch is doing a really terrible job of governing the country, and so he takes things into his own hands by killing the cabal of privilege that protect the king, and then sentencing the king and all the nobility to death. And that is the promise of blood. He is going to kill hundreds, if not thousands of people by beheading them in the square. Did I mention that this book is a little violent and gory? Because it is. And it also scratches an itch that some of the other books that that we've read on the podcast just haven't done. So if you're reading with younger kids, I would preview the book before sending them on the adventure, and you decide what's good for your kids or for yourself if you're not into that.
Yep.
But I found this book to be very compelling and very good, and I just kind of like this. At one point Tamas says, like, I'm gonna let them choke on their own bloodlust and let the commoners see all the nobility die, because there's just this he wants to feed this kind of rage that the people have felt towards the nobility, how they've been there's lots of injustice in this world. We have the haves and the have-nots, and so Tamas is promising them that all the royalty and all the nobility are going to be brought down. They even mention at one point that there was 1.5 foot of blood in one of the square. There's so many beheadings going on.
Seeped into the bricks on the road.
Yeah, and turn them to rust. So that is the promise of blood. That is the title of the book, and that's how the book opens. So it opens with a bang.
Yeah, I like the kind of the little tagline that the book has. It says, "The age of kings is dead, and I have killed it." It's kind of that's Tamas's thing that he does at the very beginning. This book also had a cool thing, whenever you first open, just even the first page, it has this little preview of the book, and it kind of gives Tamas's talking to himself about why he's doing what he's doing. So I think it was that's a cool thing that you just open the book and you're like, oh, I can just read a little excerpt of the book just so I can see if it is a style that I would enjoy. I thought that was a cool thing.
Oh, that was not included in my Audible edition. So
the benefits of paperbacks.
Oh, you might have to send it to me.
I think it's something that they pulled from the chapter, though.
Okay, so I have read it at some.
Yeah, they took a portion of I think it's even in the first chapter. They just took it and they put it into onto the first page. Yeah,
very nice.
But yeah, I thought it was a good idea to get you hooked and engaged. Yeah, so kind of speaking of with that quote that Gabe mentioned about the monarchy and Tamas's kind of conviction that governments exist to serve the people instead of the other way around. We can talk a little bit about monarchy versus democracy. This has a very French Revolution kind of era in mind, and it's and the French Revolution also was a pretty bloody revolution. So they overthrew all of the monarchies, and they basically did the same thing. They took them out in the streets and they beheaded them with the guillotines. Not unfortunately, the whole stuff with the French Revolution kind of blew up in their face, because even the people who led that revolution, they ended up getting killed themselves. So it's kind of a big messy situation over there in France. So I don't know, maybe that will happen to Tamas at the end of the story. He gets beheaded by his own the monster that he created will destroy him. So I don't know, we'll see what happens. I'm interested to see the end of the story, although I haven't gotten there yet. And so that's basically the big struggle in the whole book, is the monarchy versus the democracy, especially at the beginning, because he has to fight a civil war with some of the remaining people who are loyal to the monarchy. And then there's kind of a pivot to whenever he gets that civil war under control, then he has a pivot to an outside force that is coming to take them over, because they sense a bunch of weakness in the kingdom of Adro, because there's a civil war, of course, and there was just a big leadership change, and it's the Kez, that's the enemy.
Yep.
The enemy faction,
the invading force.
Yeah, they're coming in to take over. So there's a lot of cool political stuff going on within Adro, between the monarchy and the people who want to change it into more of a democracy. And then there's the outside invading force, and there's a bunch of other kingdoms as well that are around the area that we don't really get to explore too much in this book. We just kind of hear bits and pieces as we go along. So yeah, next let's just talk a little bit about the magic system, which again is pretty cool. So you basically have a few different like types of magical beings or magical people. So you have people called Nact, that's like the lowest level. And then you have the Powder Mages, which is what Tamas is. He's a Powder Mage. And then you have Privileged, who are kind of like, I guess they're like more pure, like magical beings. Like they just have abilities innately, and they don't have to use anything like black powder to fuel their magic. And then you have the Prede. No, the Preti. Is that how you said it? You pronounced it?
Preti, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you have the Preti, who we learn basically in the very middle of the book, around chapter 18, 19, 20 is when we learn about the Preti. And they're like super privileged. Like they're some of the original magic users in this world, and they're really powerful. So
all right, so I'm going to jump in and geek out on some of these things.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so a Nact, so we have a character named Olam who is going to become Tamas's new bodyguard, and he is a Nact, and his ability is he doesn't need to sleep.
Yep.
So he is up at all hours, and it doesn't bother him because he doesn't need to sleep. That's his Nact. And then we have Adamat, who is another Nact, and he is able to remember everything, period.
Photographic memory.
Yep, eidetic memory. Gifted to him. And then we have some other minor Nact people, people who can sense lies, and people who can pick locks, and and then we have a big Nact person, or believed to be a Nact, which is Mahali, and he has a knack with food. He seems to be able to make a lot and make like delicious food
out of thin air.
Yeah, and that's like they mentioned that a Nact's power could be like super big, like, you know, creating food out of thin air, even though they're not privileged or anything, but they could have a very specialized Nact that makes them very powerful.
Yep.
Oh man, and then we're gonna get into the Powder Mages. So like Tamas is like the OG like Powder Mage. He's powerful. Also like he's like super powerful. He's also a great tactician. He's the leader of the army there in Adro, and he's called the Field Marshal. And so basically powder is like a way to a powder mage uses gunpowder to kind of power themselves up, so they can like enter into a berserker rage if they breathe in like the powder, and they have like charges of powder that go into guns, and then they have horns of powder. And we learned that like Taniel is kind of addicted. There's this whole like addiction thing that he comes in and he's like sniffing powder. At one point in the story, he's sniffing it straight out of the box. He's not even doing the thing, and he's like entering a powder trance, and so it makes him like superhuman. He can take a lot of damage and outlast other people. And then they have like really cool abilities. Like Tamas is really good at like he can take a bullet and shoot around corners. That's like one of his gifts. The Powder Mages like Vlora, who we hear a little bit about, who was engaged to Taniel at one point, is able to ignite powder and make it explode from a distance. And then Taniel is called Taniel Two-Shot. So he's got this great thing where he can put 2 musket balls in his rifle and he shoots it, and then he does this thing called nudging, where he can he can take the bullet and then keep it lifted by burning powder so it shoots longer and farther, and then he nudges the bullets like left and right, up and down, just perfectly so that they can hit the mark every time. So every time he makes those micro adjustments, he burns a little bit of powder to do that. And then we'll go into the privilege, and they have to have their privilege gloves, which are white with like gold or red runes to touch the else. And that's when they are able to, they like do weird finger motions to summon like wind and other elements and stuff, and they can heal, and they can slice buildings in half and blow things up. You just don't know what's going to happen when you're dealing with a privilege.
The privilege kind of remind me of the the magic users in the Shadow and Bone universe, where they have to use their hands to make some kind of symbol to cast the magic. I'm blanking on what they're called because it's been a while since I watched the Netflix show, but it's similar to that if you've seen that show or read those books.
I think there was a book, and I think I read it several years ago. But
yeah, I have one of the books
remember
up there. I'm planning to read. But yeah, it is a Netflix show, and I think they're shooting season 2 right now, something like that.
My wife has watched all the Netflix stuff, like Witcher and that, and really cool. And then you have the Pretty, who also use their gloves, but they've kind of they're old. Like when we're talking old, they're
like elves,
old,
like
back
1,000
to
years.
the time. Yeah, old back to the time of Kresimir, which is a god in this world, and he walked the earth, and super powerful, being, as a god usually are. And so definitely love the whole powder mage idea, that you have these people who can supercharge themselves by using gunpowder. Very kind of unique. I like how they call it sorcery in this book. They don't call it magic. They call it sorcery. And the narrator of the Audible book, he's just got this gritty voice, and he reads it, and he's like, "And sorcery entered the world," and you're like, "Ooh, that sounds so much more dangerous than magic, coming into the world." He's like, "Sorcery." And so I like the use of the word sorcery over the magic. I just feel like it fits the theme, the gritty.
Yeah, sorcery makes it seem more darker and gritty, and because magic is woo, magic, that's cool, kind of more
exactly
more fun, I guess. Magic is more Disney like. But sorcery seems like we're going to a dark place when we talk about sorcery.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I just had to geek out there because it's really
yeah, no, all good. It's good. good to geek out. We like geeking, and of course, side quests. We gotta have side quests. Mm-hmm. So let's just jump into some of the story a little bit. We kind of already talked a little bit about Tamas overthrowing the king Manhooch, and this is basically the first chapter of the book where we kind of get this. We basically get the aftermath of the coup. We don't get all the stuff that happened up to the coup. We just get the coup has happened. Tamas has won. Manhooch is dead, and along with most of his other cabal. And so he institutes a new council, and he has a few people on this council that are going to help him. It's basically the president's cabinet, where he gets a bunch of advisors to help him run different parts of the country, because they have specific expertise in certain things that he does not have. So we have Ricard Tumblar, who kind of runs a bunch of the labor unions, and then we have Lady Wenceslav, who is one of the noble women of Adro, and she runs a mercenary group called the Wings of Adam, who are really strong fighters. Maybe if you're familiar with Game of Thrones, maybe they're the Unsullied or the Golden Company, something like that, where they're paid mercenaries who are highly trained and highly specialized. So she runs that group. And then we have Andras the Reeve, who's the finance minister. Do you remember why he's called the Reeve? I don't remember specifically why he's called that.
No, I don't remember either. I wonder if I can figure that out. But
anyways, then we have a eunuch, who's known as the proprietor. We actually don't know his name, but he has a lot of connections in the Andran underworld, with thieves and assassins and those kind of people. And then we have the link to the church, the Crescent Church leader. His name's Archdiocese Charlemont. And so that is the group that he has assembled to help him run the country. And they also were instrumental in helping him to enact this coup and make this coup happen. They were able to support him in this, and that's why they're the ones that are going to be leading the country afterwards. Do you have a favorite council member?
Oh, just real quick, a reeve historically means a local official, in particular a chief magistrate of a town or district in an Anglo-Saxon England, and in Canada, it's the president of a village or town council. That's what a reeve is. Yeah, so... All right, so do I have a favorite council member? I think they're all interesting. Rickard Tumbler's kind of like a ladies' man, but he's also in charge of the unions. I find that interesting. The Wings of Adam will play a big role in the whole trilogy, so we'll learn more about how they are organized and how they fight and stuff. Just a quick caveat, they are a hireable mercenary force, but unlike the Unsullied, they are made of normal people. I feel like the Unsullied were introduced, like, the guy goes up and, like, sorry for this being a graphic description, but he cuts off the nipple of one of the Unsullied, and he just kind of stands there like, this is okay.
Yeah.
This is fine. These are... Yeah.
It's like that dog meme where, like, there's the fire all around him. He's like, this is fine. Yep. Everything is fine.
Yeah. And I think that so the proprietor is just shadowy. We don't know much about the proprietor, and he's represented by the eunuch. And then Charlemont is like a great fencer, and he has been like promoted to the archdiocese, which is a leader in the church. And at one point in the book, and I apologize if you haven't read this, Tyler, but they say, like, no one can trash your life as thoroughly as the church can. So when they're talking about comparing the power of the relative council members, they were just like, yeah.
I'm sure some people today would say that about the church.
Yep, I'm sure they would. So no, I don't really have a favorite. They are all. I think it's a good cast of characters though, because they all are.
They're all very different.
Yeah, and they're all integral to like how a country is run.
Yeah.
Integral.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was a good cast that he has chosen here.
Yeah. So as we kind of go along with the story here, the first thing that Tamas has to deal with. So we're going to do basically Tamas's story, and then we'll go and do Taniel, and then we'll do Adamat, and then I think that's when we'll be done. Or maybe we'll do Adamat after Tamas. I don't know, because Taniel's kind of where we end. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But so we have basically a civil war breaks out between, there's a general who is loyal to the monarchy. His name is General Westeven. He's like really old. I think they said he was like 70 or 80 or something like that. And he was on vacation, which is why they did the coup when he was on vacation, because they didn't want to have to deal with him, because he's like Tamas. He's like a tactical genius and a really decorated war general. And so Westeven comes back from vacation, and he gets all of the people who are loyal to the monarchy, and he basically has like a last stand, and he takes over basically the center portion of the town to kind of hole up. And I think there was something strategic about that part of the town that Tamas needed, which is why he took it. I can't remember specifically what it was. I think maybe it has something to do with like the food stores or something like that, which is why he took that portion.
I'm not sure I'm not recalling it either. Yeah, and so basically that group is called the Royalists, the people who are in for, like, there should be a monarchy, there should be a king, and we should be following them.
Yep.
And I think at one point they have Jakob, which we haven't mentioned yet, but there's a storyline about Nyla, who is a laundress for Duke Elderman, I think, and he has a son named Jakob, and he basically is the only kid who survived the slaughter. That so yeah, I like when Tamas finds Manhooch in the palace, and he's like, this is your day of judgment. I am your judge. I am your jury. You are found guilty, and you will be beheaded tomorrow. Yep. And then he just starts beheading a lot of people. Because that's how Tamas rolls. Like we said, this book is a little bloody and gory, but you know what? it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so Jakob is with Westhaven, and they're saying like, we need to put him on the throne. And Tamas is at one point, he's like,
he's a child.
You're gonna put like a 5-year-old like on the throne. Like, what are you thinking? And yeah, so then we have the royalists who are fighting, and I guess, do we go into just how that goes down?
Yeah, I mean, I think basically they have like this little kind of showdown, and they're gonna go talk to each other, just trying to see if they can have some kind of truce or whatever it is. And West even is demanding that Tamas surrender, and Tamas is gonna demand that he surrender. So they're kind of at an impasse, and basically like the negotiations break down. And there's some kind
the
of
privileges start, and the Pretty start throwing fireballs. So
yeah, basically that's what happens. And West even kind of gets caught in the middle of it, and he's like severely mortally wounded, and they take him away. And yeah, basically there's just a big civil war, and eventually who are we calling the people on Tamas' side? The I don't know what to call them. The anti-monarchy people, the people who don't want the monarchy, they come out on top eventually.
Just because call them the people
versus the royalists.
Yeah, the people versus the royalists, because Tamas is kind of like the hero of the people.
Yeah, or he wants to be seen like that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so eventually they come out on top, just because I think they have more people on their side, and they have some pretty powerful privileged as well, although the royalists did have a pretty powerful privilege as well, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And yeah, then there's some little bit of some downtime, and Tamas is trying to like recover from the Civil War and get all of the infrastructure of the country kind of back on track, because whenever you have a civil war, there's a lot of destruction and a lot of people die. People who were running certain parts of the country need to be replaced and all that kind of stuff. So he kind of has to take all of those different things and put them back together so that the country can function in a proper way again. And I think this is where we get to meet a character he's like a chef. His name is Mahali, and he claims to be the Adam Reborn, who is the god Kresemir's brother in the histories. So he's claiming to be Adam Reborn, which is why he is such a great chef, because he has this knack or this ability to like make food out of thin air, and he's really skilled at like making the actual dishes too. Like they all taste really good, and he's really spoiling the soldiers who he's feeding, and they love him so much, and he's keeping the morale basically up of all of the whole army because his food is so good. So yeah, I think Mahali he's a pretty cool character. I like him. Every scene that he's in, he's just he's pretty jovial, pretty happy, and yeah, he makes some good, what was the soup that he was really looking forward to eating, like the squash soup, I think it was, that Tamas loved so much.
Yeah, so I love how Tamas, like, so he gets introduced to Mahali. He comes in, and he's like, I am your chef. And then someone's calling him a cook, and Tamas is like, he's a chef. He's like, stop it. He's a chef.
No cook.
And this is before he's, like, committed to the whole thing. But, so Adam was Adam Reborn is supposed to be a god. And I just think to Jesus and the fish and the bread that he broke for 5,000, and how he kind of fed the people from basically nothing.
Yeah.
And so same sort of deal here, except Harley is doing it in style. Like he's putting in biscuits
Spices.
And he's putting and like putting it in. He's feeding 9-course meals to everyone. And I kind of like his approach. It's so first of all, I think that feeding people is like one of the best things you can do. Like if you can take someone to your house and feed them, like I don't know about you, but when someone like feeds me really good food, like I'm pretty happy.
Yep.
And so Jesus broke bread for 5,000 people, and from my understanding, that was 5,000 men at the time, and they didn't really quote unquote count women and children in that mix.
Yep.
So he just so there were 5,000 men's or heads of family, and then
Yep.
he fed all these people, and that is just God's abundance right there. And God is able to produce, Jesus is able to produce all this stuff because he is God, and he's able to feed all the people. And, in a time before mass production, this is unheard of. And it's just a carpenter and a rabbi who is Jesus, feeding all these people. So I love how we look at Maharli, and he's like basically giving morale to everyone because of his ability to be a good chef. So
just like shows
that's
the
kind of my
importance of
God
food.
thought at the
like the importance of food and hospitality, and making people, feel like they're at home almost. Because the more you feel at home, the more comfortable you are, and the more you're less likely to like complain about your circumstances if you're well fed, right?
Yeah, and that can be I could say that could be a double-edged sword if, like if you're just being so well fed and you're not thinking about anything else. But
True.
That's not really where I'm going with this comment.
Yeah.
I thought that he's just a fun I just enjoy the scenes that he's in. Like Tamas goes down and like explores the kitchens, and he's in there and he's like making food, and he's got all these like women like helpers, and
They're his students, remember?
Oh yeah, his pupils.
Yes.
Everyone is a pupil. They must learn. It is mentioned some point that he had over 400 wives at some point. So he did enjoy the women. That
sounds like Solomon.
Yep, kind of that way. But yeah, so I just thought he was a fun character. Like he was kind of like a like almost like a comic relief in the way that he deals with things.
With all the death and destruction and blood going around, we have Maharli making really good food for people and being witty.
Lobster bisque and other things, or lamb souffle. Yeah, so he's a fun character.
Yeah, I think another parallel, like with Jesus, with him, is just how he like satisfies people's hunger with the food, and that's kind of what Jesus does for like our souls. He satisfies our needs, and like our true needs, not like the things that we want and desire because of our sin nature, but the things we really need. Jesus satisfies those things, and that's kind of if we're making the parallel with like Maharli and Jesus, like that's kind of another little thing that I kind of see there between the two of them. Like
woman at the well, like come to me and you will be satisfied, and like your body needs this water, but I'm really the thing you need to partake of to feel satisfaction with like your soul and like the and how you feel inside versus just meeting the needs of the flesh.
Yeah. Very good. So I think the next big thing that happens with Tamas's story is that there's a murder attempt on his life, and he is in a like portion of, I don't want to call it a palace. I don't know if it's the palace that he's in, but there's this portion of,
I feel like he's in that huge government building.
Yeah, like this big government building.
Yeah.
But it's like a secret room.
Yeah, this is a really this is like a secret room. It's a really good encounter too. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and this is where this is where they basically planned the coup. They found this room that nobody knew about, and so all of the people were able to come to this room and not be found out. And so he goes to this room to kind of think and be alone because nobody else knows where it is. And somehow somebody gets in there to try to assassinate him. I think there's the thing that was sent after him was called a warden, and it's like this. It's almost like this enhanced human who like doesn't feel pain, or he's able to take a lot of damage than a normal human would be able to. I don't remember if they ever like just specifically told us what the wardens are or what they do, but they're really hard to kill, essentially.
Yeah, they're like worth 10 in a battle, they said, and they said that they are warped by privileged sorcery. So a privilege is like they said that, you know, experimenting on humans is kind of frowned on, but the Kez are like, it's kind of like the war crimes that, you know, Adolf Hitler had.
Sure.
And they were experimenting on humans, and so the wardens are like these supercharged people, and they have like all these muscles, and like they said that they're even like live snakes under their skin. Like the muscles would move and bulge, and it like move around under their skin and everything. So this is kind of like another category. So we talked about, you know, the powder mages, which Tamas is a powder mage, and the privilege and the pretty and the knack. But we also have wardens here. And so they're basically like super tough, and they can withstand a lot of damage. They're kind of like, I mean, I feel like maybe not exactly, but there's kind of a parallel to the decor monks that we read about in like Brandon Sanderson's, like how they are amplified, and like, and they're also like, it's not an easy path. Like it seems like, you know, both, you know, the decor monks and the wardens are kind of tortured to get to this path of, or like to become this like superhuman, basically. But yeah, it's a very interesting like scenario. So the warden comes into the secret room, and he confronts Tamas, who is got his two dogs in there, Pitlor and Krush. Yeah, and so the warden like undresses, and he like he's just like left in suspenders, and he's like, I haven't feasted on human flesh in a while. I've never been given a powder mage so cleanly. And then there's just like this fight scene. He's like, he throws like furniture at Tamas, and Tamas is like old, but he's a powder mage, so he's like still really spry. So he like ducks out of the way, and he like gets over to his coat, which has like some gunpowder, and then it talks about him just like inhaling it, and he's just like, he enters what they call the powder trance. And he's like roar, and then he like he like
what was he like again?
Roar, and he like gets his sword, and he like runs through the warden, and just basically kills him. And there's a point when the warden has Tamas like crushed up in his body, and then the dogs actually attack the warden and free Tamas, and that's how he's able to get to his powder and become supercharged. And then he hears his dog being basically
mauled.
Just mortally wounded, and it cries out in pain, and it's like it broke Tamas's heart to hear that. And then the dog doesn't make it. I think that's Pitlor who dies. Tamas carries the dog up while he's all bloody and injured, and finds the doctor and says, "Doctor, will you please heal my dog?" And he's just said, "There's nothing I can do," and the dog dies. So that was sad, but it also like shows you, like Tamas is not. He is a very like kind of cold, harsh person, and we'll talk about that a little bit in Taniel's story. But I mean, to undergo like the revolution and the coup and everything, you know, you have to be a kind of cold, calculating person, and you just kind of see Tamas's humanity just a little bit in there as he's feeling for his dog.
So after the murder attempt, Tamas realizes that there has to be some kind of betrayer in his inner circle, because nobody would have known about that room besides the people who we mentioned previously who were in his council. So it has to be one of the 5 people on his council that gave him up, essentially, and tried to have him assassinated, or is at least in with the Kez, because I think it was the Kez who sent the warden, because the Kez are the people who have the wardens to send out. So somebody has betrayed Tamas to the Kez and tried to have the Kez murder him for whatever reason. And so this is kind of where we are gonna stop on Tamas's story, because he has to figure out how who is the betrayer, why they want to betray him, and all of that kind of stuff. And so before we do that, maybe we can talk a little bit about just Tamas as a character, like who he is, his beliefs, that kind of stuff. Like you were mentioning that he's kind of like a cold, calculating kind of character. But I think he does have some soft spots, and I think like he does love his son, even though he kind of treats him like pretty harshly. He does love his son though, and I think so. In Tamas's history, he had a wife, obviously, because he has a son, and so the Kez murdered his wife, and I think that's maybe a point in his life where he kind of became a different person after that happened. But he's basically all about like getting the job done, like no matter the cost. He's like the ultimate pragmatist. And I mean, I think there's something to be said about being pragmatic and being somebody who gets things done, but sometimes that can take you to places maybe that you probably shouldn't go, or you're going too far in some instances where you're all about getting the job done, but you're doing it in a way that is betraying your moral compass in a way. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think your quote from earlier, that Tamas is, expedient is just
Sure.
what you're looking for to kind of describe him, and it acts, exactly what you said. When we jump into expedience, we are not looking to God for what is right, because we are doing what's easy and what's fast,
Yep.
Versus trying to try and get to like go through a situation and leave relationships intact and kind of feed other people, because it's very easy to go through and stomp on other people and what they want and put your agenda first. But the way God calls us to be servants, and we want to lift the people around us up and to do things in a way that is honoring to the people around us, and to be have a servant's heart. And Tamas, I believe he has those traits, but like the quote said, he does things that are expedient. He killed a whole like thousands of royal people, but he did it for the people. So like his heart, I feel like his heart is in the right place.
Yes.
He can't stand his country that he loves being run into the ground. He sees the common person and he says, this person needs help. I will be the hammer to bring justice to our system, and I will be that person. So you have, like, for me, I love Tamas. Like his heart's in the right place, and I would never murder someone, but like if you could get behind someone, I feel like you could get behind Tamas. Like he's gonna do it. He's gonna do it right, and he's but all in the first, like, we're gonna get into Taniel's story, but when he first comes back, Taniel's just, his thought process is like, this is the first time I've seen my dad, I want to kind of see him, and basically Tamas is like, good to see you, son, here's your new assignment, we'll see you later. And he's just
good luck.
Like, and I think you are right that he deeply loves his son, but he's gonna get it done. That's like his thing. He's going to get it done. And he does step on the relationship with his son, and it's all in the name of expedience here.
I think he's one of those characters who's like a man on a mission. He's sort of like, I don't know if you've seen the Avengers movies, I assume, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you have Thanos, who is basically, he's a man on a mission. And like anybody who gets in the way of accomplishing his goal, he is going to just like wipe you out. Like he doesn't care what you think or like what your reasoning is for doing what you're doing. If you're in his way, you're gonna get taken out. And I think that's kind of like Tamas's, like how he, like his MO for accomplishing his goal. Like he doesn't care about anybody else around him. Like unless you're with him together trying to complete the task, like he doesn't care. Like get out of his
very
sight.
Machiavellian.
Yeah, sort of. But yeah, like he does have those. You can tell that he does have like a deeper side, because like he loves his dogs. Like he was heartbroken whenever he lost to the one dog. He has like the people that are close to him, like his bodyguard Olam and Saban, and like even at the very beginning, whenever some of the people that he went to take over and kill or like capture Manhooch, whenever some of his privileged were killed, like he feels for those people. Like he didn't want any of them, any of his soldiers to die. I think he's like a very good leader and a commander, and he really cares for the people that he's leading, and he wants the best for his soldiers. It's just that like whenever you're against him, like he has no mercy for you in a sense.
He'll crush you underfoot.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. Tamas is a pretty cool. He's a good character. He definitely has some flaws. But yeah, that still doesn't mean he's not a cool and interesting and complex character. So speaking of him needing to figure out who his betrayer is, the second character we're going to look at is Adamat. I think that's how you pronounce it. Adamat.
Adamat. Yep.
And so he is basically like an investigator, and in the first chapter, it's actually his perspective that we get at the beginning of the story, of him going into the palace and seeing kind of the aftermath of the coup and all of the dead people. And he just kind of like walks up, and Tamas is like covered in blood. And I'm sure that's definitely what Adamat was looking for that evening, to walk into the palace and see everybody dead and get a job from Tamas. So the job that he's given is he needs to investigate the secret of Kresamir's promise, which is something that was spoken of by one of the privileged, I think, who was killed. That's saying
all of the privileges who were killed in the Royal Cabal. So the Royal Cabal is like, the privilege are the mighty, sorcerers and magic wielders, and as they're dying, they're saying, you can't break Kresamir's promise. And Tamas says it was like an entreaty, like they were entreating him to not break Kresamir's promise. And so Tamas hires Adamat to kind of figure out, what does that mean?
Yep. And yeah, like we said earlier with Adamat, he is he's a photographic memory. That's his knack. And so that's why he's a really good investigator, because everything that he sees, he remembers. And so he's able to recall people that he saw one time. He's able to recall an article that he read 30 years ago. All this random stuff. So that's why he's really good at finding out the secrets that people don't want to be discovered. And he's recommended by, I think, one of the people who was killed in the coup is someone who recommended Adamat to Tamas. That's why he is summoned to the palace. Are you gonna say something?
Yeah, and I can't remember if the guy was a marked. So a marked is a way to describe a powder mage, or it's just like their position.
Sure.
So Tamas calls his powder cabal, so like his collection of 18 powder mages, marked. Mm-hmm. And I think they lose 5 during the killing of all the privilege in the Royal Cabal, but one privilege escapes and kills 5 of the marked, and that's another loose end that we're going to talk about with Taniel's story. And then Adamat is on a mission, so he's like going to libraries, he's like, and then there's like a
going
war
everywhere
in the streets. And he's got his family out. He's got like 9 kids, and the first thing he does is he goes home and he says to his wife Faye, you need to get a carriage, you need to get
the heck
kids,
out of here,
you need to get the heck out of town, don't come back. And then
until I tell you,
he basically says, like, basically our way of life as we know it has ended. Tamas has killed it, by taking off taking out the crown, and
Yep.
now we are entering a new age of Adapest. So he gets his family out of there, and he's like trying to find answers. He's looking in books, pages are ripped out. Someone is obviously hiding something here. He's like crawling through sewers to access like different parts of the towns that have been shut down due to all the infighting and the civil war that's going on. So
Yep.
he's got kind of a grueling job, and he hires some muscle named Sue Smith as his bodyguard, and we get introduced to Sue Smith as this old kind of has-been like bare knuckle boxer guy, and he's in the ring with this young whippersnapper, and the guy's beating him, and Sue Smith's all bloody and laying on the ground, and the guy's like, yeah, I'm winning, and Sue Smith just like gives him one haymaker. He just like he's just like, he rose in 1 second and like punches him, and like he just lays out flat. Like I think of that one movie with Brad Pitt as the bare knuckle boxer. I think is it Snatch? I want to say it's Snatch, and he just like punches the guy, and he's like in midair, like horizontal, like,
Yeah.
and Sue Smith just like walks out. So that was a great introduction and to Sue Smith. And yeah, so Adamat is on the trail, and he's discovering information. And how does he totally figure this out? I think he goes to see Bo. Is that right?
Yeah, he goes all the way out to. Gotta look at the map.
Shoulder
crown.
Crown.
Shoulder Crown, and there's like a little. It's like almost like a filled-in volcano. I think is what it looks like in the map.
Yep.
It's called Shoulder Crown Fortress and the Crescem Caldera, and there's like a little, kind of like a little town up in the caldera up there. There's a lake and some different things. Yeah, I think he goes all the way out there to kind of figure out, because he's basically, all of his leads end up dry because, yeah, like you were saying, somebody has basically went around to all of the different books and like tore out all of the pages. And I remember he went to that one library in like the middle of the night, and the one lady's like, "Why are you here?" He's like, "I need to find."
And she's
these...
like 16.
Yeah, I need to find these books. And then she sees all the pages ripped out, and she's like aghast. She's like, "Who would do this to the books? That's defamation, blasphemy." She's like super upset that people would deface her books. That's how I feel about my books. So don't come to my house and then just tear out random pages of books. I'll be very upset.
Do you write in your books?
I will do like little post-its here.
I write in my books.
I can't bring myself to write in books, although I will highlight sometimes.
Okay.
I won't do that to any like fantasy books though. I don't know. I'm weird. I haven't found like a good system yet for note taking. I just need to like figure out some good system. If you have a good note taking system for books, fantasy books, whatever, leave a comment. Let me know.
Well, I have a good note taking system. I use Evernote.
Sure.
And I have for years, and I have thousands of notes in there, but I just haven't done it because it's tough for me, because I listen to the books like on my commute, either to or from school, and then when I get to school, I am like I'm very like buzzer to buzzer at my job. I work from the time I get there. I actually show up about 15 minutes early, and I try and get my God time in, and then so I'm at my desk for 15 minutes, and I try and spend some time with God. That doesn't always happen, but I like to try and make it happen. Then I work like the whole day, then I commute home, and then I pick up my daughter and do evening stuff. But yeah, I don't have a time. I haven't made a time to write down all my thoughts from the book, so I just have to go out of my brain. But I feel like I'll be more organized one day in the future. But yeah, I definitely recommend Evernote for a good note-taking system.
Yeah, I use Notion, which is kind of similar to Evernote. It's kind of like a note-taking life organizer app, which is what we use to keep track of the podcast here and that kind of stuff as well. So I feel like the good way to do it would be to, like, if I read a chapter of the book, it's like I read a chapter and then I would write down my thoughts in Notion for each chapter. But then that makes me read so much slower than I normally would. Right. And so I almost can't bring myself to do that because of how slow it'll make the read go. So I need like a way to do that, but more like efficiently.
Yeah, you know what I've tried and I haven't perfected it yet is doing voice memos. So instead of taking the time to actually write the note down, like record like snippets of myself, and I've done it. Yeah. And it's a different way of note taking, but I know some people who swear by it and are really like do a voice memo because like there's no typing, and I could do it. I could do it in the car, like I'm saying, like I don't have time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something you could explore, and then also for stuff that I've done in grad school, just voice to text, just instead of actually typing out the note, just speaking into it, and then having the computer write down the things that I'm saying. That's like another way to do things fast. Yep, dictating goes so much faster. I could not do the papers I did in my graduate program if it wasn't for dictation. I had to. I get this block when I'm writing because I want to say it in a certain way, but when I'm speaking it, it just flows much more naturally. I definitely love dictation because it's just so much easier for me, and it goes so much faster, and so much easier for me to get all the ideas out and then to go back and edit them and get them in the right order.
Yeah. I will say, whenever I read on my Kindle, it is much easier to take notes because I can just press and hold and highlight things that I think are interesting, and that's way faster than if I'm using the Post-it notes here. It's way faster than pulling out a Post-it note, writing down my note, sticking it in there, and then going back to reading. It's way faster to just tap, highlight, and then keep going. But side quest complete. That's
exactly what I was thinking. I was like, you know what? We're doing a side quest right now, and I'm just gonna roll with it.
So yeah, if you have book note-taking ideas, leave them in the comments. Maybe I'll just take that portion of the podcast and just make that its own video clip from the podcast. How not to take notes in your books, whatever. So where were we? We were talking about Adamat doing research and going to all the different libraries and stuff, looking for information on Kresimmir's Promise, which he can't find any information, but he does get a lead that he can go all the way out to Shoulder Crown, which is, I think they said it was like a 2-day journey by carriage. I think that's what it was. Mm-hmm. So he goes all the way out there. Yeah, you can go ahead. Keep going.
And then so he meets Privileged Bourbador, who's called Bo, and this is Taniel's childhood friend, and they kind of grew up in Tamas's household together, and he's a privilege, and he was exiled from the royal cabal, and Tamas at one point was like, I made sure that he was like relocated to the Mountain Watch, and the Mountain Watch is very much like Game of Thrones, like the Watch, they defend the wall and everything, and it's also full of like outcasts and criminals and stuff. They go there to serve their time, and very similar to that. So Bo is up there serving out his exile, and he's the only privilege there, and he's kind of a people's person, so he's very friendly, and he makes friends with people up in the Mountain Watch and everything. But he has been part of the royal cabal, so he's had access to kind of secret and esoteric knowledge only known by the cabal, and he talks to Adamat about the Geis. So essentially we learned that Kresimmir said that there should be rulers of the 9 nations, and they should be kings, and their royal cabals will protect them, and then if the king is executed, whoever killed the king must be killed by a privilege. And there's this Geis, which is basically like I think it takes the form of a necklace around Bo's throat, and it's an unbreakable charm that compels Bo to go out and to seek revenge for Manhooch's death, which in this case means to kill Tamas, the guy who took him in, raised him with Vlora. Tamas raised Vlora, who's a powder mage and who's engaged to Taniel, who we'll talk about. And then and Taniel, who's his son and who's a very strong powder mage, and then we have privileged Borbador or Bo, and then Adamat delivers his message, which was from Rosalia. So in his searching, he was in a library and he bumps into our Preti, who's our super powerful privilege, and she asks him to deliver a very cryptic message to Bo, which is she will try to summon Kresimir. And Bo hears this and he freaks.
Because previously, whenever he was talking to him, Bo was kind of like, don't worry about that. It's not a big deal, kind of a thing. Like he was kind of trying to write it off. But then after he got that cryptic message, then his whole demeanor changed after that.
He runs off. He's full of purpose, and he's like, ah! And Adamat tries to talk to him more, but Bo's not having it. He just pieces out.
Yeah. So he does get the information, I guess, that he wanted. He figures out what Kresimir's promise is, and the other thing with the Kresimir's, or with the Bo's, the Gaia, how do you pronounce that? Gaia's,
the Geis.
The Geis, yeah. It's like a process. So at the very beginning, it's not as compelling, but he can still feel like a slight tug, but like the longer and longer it goes on, it becomes more and more compelling until there'll be a point where like he can't resist it anymore, in a sense.
And if he does resist it, he'll die.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So Adamat goes back to Adapist. That's the town's name, right? Adapest, yeah. So he goes back to town and he gets to tell Tamas the things that he's learned. And then Tamas gives him a new job because he's completed this job, and he gives him a second job, which is to figure out who is his betrayer, who's the person who gave him up and tried to have him assassinated with the Kez Warden. And so that's his new job. And there's also kind of like a side story with Adamat as well, like dealing with his own personal struggles, because I think there's a story with him where he tried to start some kind of business and he took out a loan, and then the money, the thing that he had taken out the loan for was destroyed, but he still owed all the money and his business crashed and burned. And so there's this person, I think the person who he owed the money to died or something like that.
Pelagi. It's a really weird name, Pelagi.
Yeah, so this person, I think he died in like the coup or something like that, but then somebody else takes over his loan. Do you remember the specifics of that? Yeah, is that what it is?
Yeah. So I don't know exactly where it is in the book, so I'll just so Adamat takes out a loan from a friend who's in this like reputable bank, and then that bank falls into trouble. Pelagi, who's a street thug, takes over Adamat's loan and charges a lot of percentage and sits back and watches Adamat's business fail. Adamat is like in the hole about 80,000 crowner, which is a lot of money any way you look at it. And then Pelagi is trying to get leverage over Adamat and said, I need to find your family. Why'd you send them away? Because he doesn't know about the coup yet. And then he's like, Adamat's like, I still have 2 months before you,
come collect,
take my house, and come collect and all this stuff. So, and then we are introduced to a new character named Lord Vetus, who shows up with Pelagi. And Vetus is kind of this bookie sort of person, but we learn very quickly that he's very ruthless. So Pelagi is like saying how he's going to get Adamat and he needs to like pay off his loan, and then Lord Vetus just has Pelagi strangled by one of his goons. They garrote him right there, which is a garrote is where they strangle someone to death. And he just leaves the body, like Lord Vetus just leaves the body, and he's like
in his house.
See, he's like, I will come back with leverage, and then he just leaves.
Yep.
And so that is how we are introduced to Lord Vetus, who is now the third person who kind of takes over, seeing Adamat pay back his loan, and he wants information, and he wants information about Tamas,
Yep.
and what he's doing.
Yep. And so he can use he can use the loan and the money that he owes as like blackmail for him to be like a double agent and to betray Tamas. Everyone's betraying Tamas, man. Guy can't catch a break, can he?
He's at the center of a lot of controversy, that's for sure.
He's trying to save the country, and you guys are all ganging up on him, betraying him, selling him out. Yeah, so I think that's kind of basically where we're going to leave off Adamat's story until the next episode. And let's jump into Taniel. I feel like we're way over time, but we'll see what happens here. So Taniel is Tamas's son, and he is a powder mage like his father. I think all the powder mages have like slightly different abilities, or maybe they're more skilled in some things. Because I think Taniel can do some of the things that his father does, but his father is more skilled in some things than he is, and vice versa. Probably just depends on like your training and like what you focus on whenever you are a powder mage.
And some of it's innate because Laura has the ability to ignite powder from like, I think a regular powder mage can do it at like a dozen paces, and she can do it at like hundreds of paces, I think is what's said in the book.
Yeah. So yeah, Taniel was like out of country. He was helping to like, I can't remember all the specific reason why he was out. He was in, I gotta look at the map. Gotta take a,
Fatrasta,
yeah. So he was in a different country, helping like some local people or something like that. And this is where he meets Kapol, who's like people call her like a savage or something because she's not from Adro. She's like one of the, I think they're just more of like a not as developed country, I guess you could say. And so he meets her, and I think he saves her life at some point, and so now she kind of is basically like his partner, and she kind of is his traveling companion and protector, and they help each other out, and they, she's I think she's a privilege. Is that her status?
So she is a magic wielder. She doesn't use the gloves, and I think in Fatrasta they refer to them as boni.
Yes, you're right.
But she is also of Diony's descent. So I think Diony's is like another part of the nine, and she's got like red fiery hair and very pale skin and freckles, and so she's very like striking to, if we're doing Game of Thrones, like kissed by fire or touched by fire or whatever they say in the show.
She's like an Aielman from Wheel of Time with the red hair.
Yeah. And so so she's like, we learn throughout the book that people are scared of Karpol. She scares some of the Preti even. So there's something going on with her ability to wield magic. And one of the most important traits about Karpol is she's a mute. She can't speak.
Yep.
So her and Taniel have like a sort of language where she like signs things to him. She also can mouth a few words to him, but they they have the like the sign language where, well, Taniel will just speak to her.
Yep.
She understands everything that's being spoken, but so, and then Fatrasta is kind of like it's kind of like they said, it's kind of like a swampland. I almost feel like it was like the Americas, like Kez is trying to go to a new continent and take over, and then there's an uprising of the people that are there, and people who want to live there and live free from the Kez, and so Taniel is fighting in this war, and he even describes it as a war that was not his own. He just was there, and then like the revolution broke out, and he just had to pick a side, and he chose to fight against the Kez, and he was killing privilege over there with Carpol, and then they came back after like 2 years of fighting there, and he's a war hero. Everyone knows his name. He's famous around the world as Taniel Two Shot, and he's able to. Yep, Taniel Two Shot. So he's got a lot of, and he's young. He's like in his early 20s. And Carpol is at the beginning of the book. He believes that she's a very young girl, like 13 or 14, but she's like his spotter.
19 is what she is.
Yeah, so we discover later that she's older than he first thought. So they're only like 3 years apart instead of like 10 years apart in age. And she's able to not only do magic, which we'll talk about, but also she's like a skilled tracker, and her and Taniel work very well together. And then one of the things that Taniel says is, I haven't tracked people in a city before. And so we talked about how Tamas had the coup and he killed the Royal Cabal, and so there's this one privilege who got away, and we learned that's Rosalia. And so Taniel is paired with a mage breaker and a privilege. So a mage breaker is a privilege who has given up their ability to wield sorcery in order to nullify it. And there's this polarization effects with the privileged gloves where their gloves turn blue and I think gold maybe, and they are actually able to cancel the privilege. So they're with the mage breaker, and then the privilege is Julene, and we learned that she is actually a Pretty, and they are on the hunt for Rosalia, who is actually a royalist. She doesn't want the Tamas coup to succeed, and then she tries to stop it, and that's why she's at the palace, but she gets there too late, that's but she's siding with the royalist, and she's with what's his name, Westhaven.
Yes.
And she's actually the one who throws a fireball, and I think actually hits Westhaven and ends up causing his death.
Yeah. I think she's also a Pretty too, isn't she, Rosalia? Yes,
she is. Because they track her, and they have multiple encounters with her, and Taniel runs her through with his bayonet.
Yep.
And she just like walks away. Like, oh. He was like, that's not normal.
He's like, I know privileged are strong, but you can't kill them. It's like he knows he's killed privileged before, so the fact that it's taking so much more to kill Rosalia kind of makes it seem like she's maybe a little bit more special than he once thought. And same with Julene, because at that, whenever they track her to that university and they have that like big battle, Julene and Rosalia have like this massive magic battle, which is pretty epic. And I think Taniel is just sitting there like, what am I supposed to do in this situation? Like, I can't be a part of this magic wielding fight. Like, I'm going to get destroyed here. So I think he's just kind of like watching.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite scenes from the battle. So real quick, there was one more member of the council that we did not talk about yet, and his name is Prime Lecter. And he is the head of this university, but he's part of the council, so he's not there at the university when this fight happens. And Taniel's like up in a tower, and he's like trying to shoot Rosalia, and she makes this chopping motion with her gloves on, and Taniel kind of closes his eyes in anticipation of something bad happening to him, and he's like, nothing's happening. And then he feels like he's in the tower. He just feels the whole tower shift, and then he realizes that she's cut the tower in half, and he's like the top half of the tower is like collapsing and like falling down. He's like, ah!
I have to get out.
Yeah, and so he's like in his powder trance, and he's like, he gets out unscathed, but he was like, that should not have worked. I should have been at least like he's like, he was even jarred in his powder trance, I think is the way the book put it. So that, when you're fighting against people who can chop buildings in half, like, it's not a good spot to be in.
Nah, yeah, I'd probably avoid those situations if I could.
Yeah.
Don't think I'd get myself mixed up in that.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's cool to have the character who can prevent the magic from happening. For some reason I am blanking on his name.
Starts with a G. He's a mage breaker.
Gothen?
Yep.
I think that's his name. Gothen.
Gotham. Yep.
Yeah.
That's it. Good job.
There you go. So yeah, he's pretty cool. But unfortunately, I think he's killed in that battle at the university.
Yep.
Because he
melts.
Yeah. He just
what a bad way to go.
Did you want a more gory book of a character just melting?
Yeah. So basically,
that happens
as the mage breaker.
Yeah, go ahead.
As the mage breaker, he's like trying to resist the privilege magic that's coming at him.
Yep.
But he doesn't realize it's a pretty. So he's like, I tried to stop her before, and like my nullification skills she should not be able to do this, but he doesn't realize he's facing off like against like basically 10 or 20 privileges in one person. That's how powerful the pretty are. And so that's why he ends up melting.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gotham.
Yeah, that's too bad. I liked him. He seemed like a cool guy. But yeah, what's that quote from Lord of the Rings? What can man do against such reckless hate? From Theoden. Great quote. So yeah, that's kind of there's that portion where they have the battle at the university. I'm trying to see. Whoops, I just messed up the recording here. Sorry, folks. That's okay. If you're on audio, you never saw anything, so it doesn't matter. So yeah, they have that battle at the university, and basically they have to let Rosalia go because she's just too powerful, and Taniel is just like, if you're gonna leave and not be against us, that's fine. Just take off and go, because basically what Tamas didn't want was her to be constantly a thorn in his side and keep them from accomplishing what they wanted to do. So he just lets her go and leaves the country essentially. And then kind of the next phase of Taniel's story is his father sends him on this quest to go confront Bo, his childhood friend, who we met earlier whenever Adamat had went out there to get the information about Kresemir's promise. And so because Bo is going to have to at some point attempt to kill Tamas is sending his own son and Bo's best friend to kill him. And so that's Taniel's job. He has to go all the way out there and kill his best friend. Which is kind of
Tamas.
Yeah, which is kind of like a lame thing for Tamas to do to his own son, because I don't know. I guess his rationale is that you're the most talented powder mage that I have. You're gonna be the person who can get the job done and not mess it up. So you're the one that has to go and do it. And I think there was a really cool scene with him and with Taniel and Tamas, where he's basically like, I'll do it if it's an order, not if you're asking me to do it. And it's like,
right.
Tamas has to decide, like, okay, am I going to order my son to kill his best friend? So that's like the decision he has to make, which, yeah, it's kind of lame. But like, again, as we said, Tamas is like, this is the goal. This is the objective. Nothing gets in the way. No personal feelings, no family members. Nothing's going to stop me from getting what I need to do done. So he orders him to go and do it. So, which I think Taniel is kind of like, this is the part of his father where he's just really frustrated with, like, he never sees, like, he doesn't say no, I guess. He doesn't, I'm trying to think of like the best way to phrase this. I don't really know a good way to phrase it. He's too myopic, I guess. he doesn't consider like personal feelings at all.
Yeah. Lacking of compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just, I mean, I just think you go back to the quote. I mean, he's just doing what's expedient. He knows that his son has been known to kill privilege while he was in Fatrasta. He's known for it. He's the best person for the job, and he's just like, I could send someone else, but you know what? You're the best at it. So, you know what? Job goes to you because you're the best.
Bad.
So,
yeah.
Yep, too bad.
Yeah, so basically they go out there, and they're going up to the area where Bo is, and Taniel's like in his mind deciding like if he has to do it, is he going to do it? You know, in his head he's thinking about the situation, and he gets up to the end, and he basically he can't do it. He's instead of just taking the shot when he could have, he decides to just walk up and talk to Bo, and this is where we kind of have a revelation with Julene, who's the companion that's been traveling around with Taniel for a while, helping him to hunt down the rest of the royal cabal privileged. And so she tries to kill Bo because Taniel won't do it, essentially. And then they kind of Taniel and Bo together fight off Julene, and she like shapeshifts, as I guess the best way I could describe it, into this lion, and she's trying to attack Bo and kill him, and they basically just like fling her off the mountainside, which is pretty crazy. And they're like, yeah, she's probably not dead though, even though we flung her off a mountainside. So
they go. So Taniel arrives down at the mountain watch, and he has to get a guide to go up the mountain, and he gets this guy named Gabriel, who's this big drunk, and he's like, yeah, Gabriel, he'll take you up the mountain. And then they have to pass through like a monastery that is really like a cool piece of like description, where it's basically hanging out over space in thousands of like feet where they could fall out if they were living. And so you have these monks that live up there, and they are protecting the path to Krezim Kurga, which is where Kresimir landed at the top of the mountain in the volcano, and where he touched down, and like the whole place collapsed, and there's a holy city at the top. And Bo has gone through the monastery, which is the only way up to the holy city, and he's past that, and there's a cave up there. And so it's Taniel and Karpol and Gavril. And yeah, during this fight, so it's a lion, but it's also got like talons, and like she's still able to do magic in her chosen form. And then most importantly, the fight is really ended by Karpol, who has a doll of Julene, and she's like wickedly like stabbing it with a needle, and
it's like voodoo.
At the end she takes it's like voodoo, and then like she takes the doll and she like blows on it, and that's what like launches Julene off the side of the mountain. And so you're having Karpol, who's this wisp of a girl, fighting one of the most powerful entities on the planet. You have the Preti, who are just make the privilege look like children playing with matchsticks compared to their power. And Karpol is able to fight her off with Bo. And then we have this revelation that Taniel has been protected somehow
by a couple.
And Bo is like, and Bo is like, I set enough traps up here to disarm like a whole royal cabal, and you walked right through them, and you set them all off, and you didn't even know. Like, and so Bo is like motioning to Taniel, like, don't come up here. And Taniel's like, he knows like I'm coming and I'm gonna kill him. And but yeah, so you have this crazy display of power by Karpol as she blows Julene off the side of the mountain. And that was a good scene. Like I
Yep.
didn't know that people could shape shift when I first read this, and I was just like, whoa,
Yeah.
she's like a lion. She's got these crazy talons. That's when I was just like, this is a really cool book, because not only do we have our powder mages and our wardens, we have like people who can change form into lions, and we have Carpole with her doll magic, her voodoo magic.
Yeah, I love learning all the different small little intricacies of Carpole's magic. Seems like there's a lot to unravel with her.
Oh, there's a lot.
I'm sure there's more coming.
There's like
one thing I will say that I
books.
read. This is a few more chapters down the line, but she makes these like bullets for Taniel, these like red stripes. The red stripe bullets who are able to like cut through the privileged shields that they put up for themselves. So that's one way that he's able to take out some of the privilege, because Carpole makes these special bullets for him, which is another pretty cool element. So she has a lot of magic that can combat the magic of the other privileged. So yeah, it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, she's very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically where we're going to leave off Taniel's story. And so one of the revelations, though, after that scene is that they are able to look over the mountainside, and they're able to see basically like this massive army of Kez coming together, and they're preparing to basically invade through like where Shoulder Crown Fortress is. I'm trying to remember what there's like a specific name for the pass that they have to go through. It's like this really narrow, like mountainous terrain. I don't remember the name, but
off the top of my
it's
head.
like a very narrow kind of mountainous area that they're trying to invade through and go through this fortress. But I think it's twofold that they want to go this way. One is that it's a different entrance than most people would think, so they have more of an element of surprise. And then also Julene wants to get into the Kresamir's kind of palace area up at the top of the mountain to re-summon Kresamir. And so that's kind of the twofold reason why they're going this way, because it's close to that area. And so that's going to be the next part of the story, is the battle for that little area of the map, which I have not finished reading yet in the book, and I'm excited to see how that ends. So the beginning part of it is really cool.
There's so much revealed. I had to hold it back.
So
it's gonna be good.
Next episode. Cool. Yeah. Anything else you got?
I think we hit it all.
I think we hit it all too, or as much as we could remember.
As much as we could remember. That's a good point.
That's right. So that's gonna do it for this episode. I don't even know how long this is, but that's okay. Next episode, we're going to be doing part 2 of this book. We'll finish it out once I finish the story, and we'll complete our discussion of this. And then I think the next book we're going to be doing is Dune Messiah. I think that's going to be the next book on the list. So if you want to read that along with us, pick that up and give it a read, and then you'll be prepared for those episodes of the podcast. If you want more Pages of Light content, you can head over to our website, pagesoflight.com. You can also follow us on social media. YouTube, if you want to watch the video version, please go over there and subscribe, and you can watch that, and also some other videos that I've done as well. As of recording this, actually today, the day I'm recording this, I put up a review of Cytonic by Brandon Sanderson, so you can go over and check that video out. And yeah, you can follow Gabe at neighborhoodnerdservices.com and check out what he's doing over there. And links to all of those things, of course, will be in the description, as well as a link to buy this book, Promise of Blood. I think it was a really good read. It's fun to read something that's a little bit more action-oriented and fast-paced than The Wheel of Time has been. The Wheel of Time is more of a slow burn fantasy series, and this is a little bit more action, packed to the gills excitement. So Yeah, definitely a different read. Yeah, I don't know. Any last thoughts, Gabe? You excited for the part 2?
Oh man, I want to talk about all the things that are going to be revealed. So I'm looking forward to our next conversation. I think it's going to be really good.
Awesome. Great. If you enjoyed this, please support the podcast, leave a review, go and subscribe on your podcast app, do all of those things. Yeah, thanks for listening or watching. Remember to keep reading, and we will. No, I did it wrong. Remember to keep reading and to share the gospel with somebody this week. And
Thank you.
Yes. We will see you guys
Gotta do it
in
that
the
way.
next episode. Peace.